Hey, I'm Alex back from Board Game Co., and this is the next episode of Should You Play It? Should You Play It is a segment brought to you by Board Game Co. in association with Board Online, Board Offline. And in Should You Play It, what we do is we pick a game and we cover briefly a very quick overview of how to play it, and then we go into 5 reasons why you might like the game and 5 reasons why you might not like the game. In today's episode, we're doing Watergate. Watergate is a fascinating 2-player asymmetric political maneuvering game that recently came out by Capstone Games, and it is, in this game, 2 players, basically, Nixon versus the press and the papers are trying to compete to uncover the Watergate scandal and what happened in the Watergate scandal. Now, in the game, effectively what you're doing is the press is trying to connect 2 different informants to Nixon through placing various tokens on the board, and Nixon is trying to block the evidence and or buy off the informants first, preventing the press from discovering that. Nixon wins if he gains enough momentum that nobody cares anymore. I mean, this is something that I'm sure people can identify with nowadays, but if you get to the point where nobody cares, it doesn't even matter. He's built up enough support, enough press, enough whatever, that nobody cares whether people find out. Alternatively, the press win if they can connect 2 informants through a chain of evidence before Nixon is able to get that momentum. If the game lasts long enough, then Nixon wins just through sheer outlasting the press. That is basically how you play the game. Now, effectively, just one more thing I guess that's relevant to the review, the main way you're doing this is you're playing cards back and forth. These cards are multi-purpose cards, so you can use them to, for instance, do an event on the card and then remove it from the game, or you can use it to actually tug these pieces of evidence back and forth and the momentum, which is how Nixon wins, back and forth. So it's a combination of card play, a little bit of board maneuvering, and then a tug of war of the various evidence, momentum, and turn order tokens on the board. So that's a short overview of how you play. Now let's get into the 5 reasons why this game may or may not be for you. So to begin with, the first reason is that why this game might be good for you, why it might be a great game for your collection, is if you are someone who likes 1960, if you are someone who likes Twilight Struggle, this is an amazing game, very similar to those games in that vein. For me, I love 1960 and Twilight Struggle. But for both of those games, I found them to be too long for the return. But I like the concept, I like the game, it was too long for me. And so I eventually traded both of them after a while and multiple plays. Watergate gives me that same feel, that same tactical card play, same board maneuvering. Obviously very different games, but it gives me that same experience, but compacted down to a roughly half an hour per game. Sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more, but roughly half an hour per game. So if you like those games, I highly recommend giving this a shot. It has a very similar feel despite being a totally different game. Reason number 2 is the what's it called? The players. It's a 2-player fighting game. So if you like 2-player tactical tough games where there's a lot of choices, games like Battle Line, games like Hanamakoji, Erland and Sea, if you like any of these 2-player tough back and forth games where it somehow manages to give a 2-player experience that is richly rewarding with a lot of tough choices, this is another game for you. Any of these 2-player games I just mentioned, Battle Line, Hanamakoji, any of these, I'm sure I can come up with more, but if you like the 2-player tactical experience, this is very much in that vein. Reason number 3 is it is thematic. This is a game where I kind of thought, based on reading the rules, that it's going to be a very pasted on theme, but having played both sides of the game multiple times, it really feels like you're doing what the game is trying to say you're doing. As the press, it really feels like you're trying to get to that evidence before Nixon can stop you, and you're trying to connect the informant, and it really feels like you have this going on. Similarly, as Nixon, when you block the press, it really feels like you're shutting down an investigation. It manages, despite the game being incredibly simple and incredibly pasted on in theory, it manages to feel like you're actually preventing, I locked off that informant, forget that evidence path. It really manages to give a surprising amount of thematic feel to it, despite what the game actually is. Reason number 4 is there are multiple paths to victory in this game. I always enjoy a game, like for instance, let's use Battle Line, I referenced a minute ago. Battle Line is a great game, but it's kind of set in the way of what you're trying to do in order to win. There's not really that much variation. Maybe you can win a little more with numbers as opposed to events, but ultimately it's really the same game and the same path to how you win. In this game, there's multiple pivoting roles of how you're going to win and how you're going to address what's happening. You can outlast your opponent, you can drive towards momentum, you can drive towards evidence. There's so many different things you have to do, and as a result, so many things you have to react to, that I have found that almost every game ends up playing out slightly different, with the players pushing and pulling in different strengths or weaknesses to try to get that game. Finally, reason number 5 is tough choices. This game is chock full of tough decisions to make. It is every single time, like I just said a second ago in terms of the multiple paths to victory. Let's say you're Nixon. Do you want to try to shut down the press and outlast them? Or do you want to drive for momentum, putting the press on their toes so they have to react to you? It's such an interesting back and forth as to what areas of the game you want to focus your strengths on that you believe will most likely get you the victory. And some of that will be dependent on your own play style. Some of that will be dependent upon what the other players are doing, the other player is doing, and some of that will be dependent on the cards you draw and the tokens that come out. There are a lot of hard decisions to be making on a regular basis. There's also a big part of it I kind of touched upon is you can weed your deck. Because certain events get removed from the game, and you will shuffle your deck usually at least once, sometimes more times per game, you can end up with a stronger second play by correctly weeding the right events from the game. There are a lot of interesting and hard decisions to be made in this game as to the way you want to tackle your approach to victory, and I really enjoy that. As far as the 5 reasons why you might not like the game, to begin with, the theme. This is not an issue of being thematic, but if you don't like a politically themed game, that might be a turnoff for you. Speaking frankly, for myself, I was less interested in the game because it was a politically themed game, but I'm not turned off by a political theme. It's just I was less interested, and it managed to rope me in just because of how good it is. But the theme is relevant to a game, and especially in today's day and age, if you just don't want to deal with politics and you don't want to deal with effectively what is an impeachment-based game, this could be a theme that just is not something you're interested in adding to your collection, and that just might not be for you. It is what it is. Reason number 2 is it's asymmetrical. Now, again, asymmetrical could be a pro or a con, but in this case, if you don't like asymmetrical games, if you don't like the fact that you're going to be sitting there and you might lose as Nixon and say, well, you know what, the press seems to have a much better deck and an easier time of winning. The problem with asymmetrical games is it's easy to lose multiple times and blame the game for that experience. Maybe you're right. Who knows? I mean, in my case, it has been fairly even in terms of how many wins and losses each side has had. But it can be frustrating to play an asymmetrical game and keep losing because you can easily feel like the game is designed against you or that side is designed against you. So it's definitely very, very, very asymmetrical. You have to rely on the fact that you believe it's balanced or multiple plays. But if you play this game 10 times and the press wins 8 times, yes, you will probably be frustrated with the game. Yeah, it is what it is. Reason number 3 is Tug of War. This game is effectively, and this is kind of similar with 1960 and Twilight Struggle, just different games, but this is effectively Tug of War in disguise. What that means is the whole game is basically doing things to undo what your opponent just did. Now, that at its core, that sounds pretty stupid, and it can be. It can be frustrating. I found in 1960 and Twilight Struggle, I did find it frustrating despite enjoying the games around it. For whatever reason, I find it less frustrating here, but the whole game, you're basically playing a card and moving evidence towards my side. Then you play a card and move the evidence back to your side. Ultimately, it's just an elegant tug of war game. The reason I still enjoy it is it kind of hides and disguises that because of the different areas you're pulling on. You're not just pulling on one thing, you're pulling on multiple things, and it can be very interesting in the decisions you have to make to try to win. But all that being said, it is basically Tug of War in disguise, and that might just be not a game system you're looking for. It's probably worth trying, but it could be something you just find, oh, I undid you, oh, I undid you. That could be a feeling you might get from this game. Reason number 4 is, and this is a stupid reason, but it actually is kind of bothersome, I hate the cards in this game. They are just, I'm someone who avidly sleeves my games, and these cards they don't fall into any of the standard sleeve sizes you'll find. I mean, actually, I can do this right here. Up here, I have an entire, I don't know if you can see that from there, but this entire cabinet is full of sleeves. I have sleeves for every size and style of game. I do not have sleeves for this game. They have a weird card size. I have to custom order sleeves. Basically, it's going to add an extra, I mean, I usually get my sleeves pretty cheaply, but it'll add an extra $10 to the cost of the game just to sleeve this game. I'm probably going to do it because I'm playing it enough, but it's kind of frustrating and annoying. I wish they had chosen a standard card size. I don't know why they made this choice. It's very frustrating when both in box box sizes, sleeve sizes. When game publishers choose to break standards for whatever reason, it is frustrating to people, myself included, that they're breaking standards. I mean, there's weird box sizes that people decide to do for some reason that don't fit in any standard shelf. In this case, it's a standard box size. But then there's weird card sizes. I don't know why they chose to do that. It's a great game despite that, but it's frustrating. And finally, reason number 5 is if this is a game where you are constantly fighting for initiative, turn order, meaning who goes first. The way it works in the game is whoever has initiative gets to play 5 cards instead of 4 each round, and they go first and last, which is a big deal. But that also means that you're kind of incentivized to constantly be fighting for turn order. Now, that can be annoying, meaning there's a tactical decision involved in fighting for turn order and making those choices. But just like the tug of war aspect might be frustrating to people, I know in other games I and other players I've often seen frustrated by the concept of fighting for turn order. It kind of feels like an extra amount of work involved in the game that's just there to add another aspect to the game. But it kind of feels like, oh, well, Lords of Watergate, but I guess I'll place my guy to go first because I really want to. But it kind of feels like you're wasting moves in order to go first. Meaning, yes, it is strategically rewarding and is a strategic choice, but it can often be a frustrating strategic choice, even though it's strategic. So if you don't like fighting for turn order, you're going to be doing that a whole lot in this game, and it is an important part of the game. You cannot just leave turn order alone and say, well, I'll just fight in other areas. You will probably lose if you never get initiative. So that can be another reason why you might find it frustrating. So there you have it. There are my 5 reasons you might like it, my 5 reasons you might not like it. This is a game that I personally find very rewarding. That being said, there are certainly aspects and game design choices that I can see being frustrating to other players. I hope you enjoyed this review. If you want more content, you can subscribe to this channel, Board Online, Board Offline. You can also find a link down below to subscribe to my other channel, Board Game Co. Past that, have a good one, and I hope you enjoy or whatnot.